Good morning, my name is Daniel Martin Gonzalez, and in today's presentation I will be talking about English for specific purposes for the case of the Bachelor in Economics. These are the different table of contents that I will be presenting. So first of all, I will introduce myself as an ESP teacher. Then I will talk about the importance of English for economics and how my groups are framed. Then the methodology that I employ in my classes. Finally, I will present some activities and some final remarks regarding my groups. So first of all, in the case that I'm presenting today, we are talking about English for economics, but I have also taught other ESP courses such as English for commerce. In this case, we will be talking about business English in both cases. I have also taught English for tourism, English for fashion design, English for statistics, English for music, English for literature, English for information science, and also some English for academic purposes in the cases of students who are writing a dissertation, and also PhD students who want to learn how to write a research paper. So as I was saying, in the case of English for economics, I have been teaching this for the last 4 years. So it is a really specific group with some characteristics that I'm presenting here. So first of all, the subject is not actually called English for specific purposes, but idioma moderno. So it's like a modern language. It takes place in the first year of the degree, and it also happens in the first term. So that means that I'm probably one of the first professors that my students get to know at university, unless they are repeat students. The subject takes 6 credits, so it's just a one semester subject. It's not an annual subject, and it is the only English course they take in economics. For instance, in other degrees at Complutense, like commerce, I think they take at least 2 compulsory language requirements, and they can also study 2 more, like optional courses. So as I was saying, my students are between 18 to 20 years old, depending on whether they are first year students or they are repeat students, right? And I have a few cases of the latter. These students have no previous experience in ESP, so it is their first contact with an ESP course. They actually think, because of the name of the course, that it's going to be an English for general purposes course. And also it is the first contact they have with tertiary education. The course takes place twice a week. It is like 2-hour class in both days. It's normally alternative days, but also it could be continuous days like Mondays and Tuesdays. Then it's important to highlight that even though groups are formed by 40 to 50 students or even 60, in the cases of languages, students are split into different sections. So one group is normally around 20 students, so that they are less in the class and they can practice more, which is good because we have a main problem, which is that students have different levels of foreign language proficiency. This is normally from the level A2 to the level C1. The methodology that I employ in my classes is TBLT. So I use task-based language teaching, following the logical idea of a hiring process. So thinking like we have to do some activities like preparing a curriculum vitae, then also preparing a cover letter, sending an email in order to try to apply for a position, which is normally an employment related to economics. And then they have to work for a company. Well, and before that, they have to do an interview. They have to do an oral job interview. And finally, the capstone project is pitching an idea or it could be an idea or a product for a company in the company that they work for. I also use gamification. I already published an article about this, about Book Club activities. I normally use Book Club in order to reinforce vocabulary, since students have to deal with so much specific vocabulary of business English. Sometimes, even though if they have like a C1 level of English, they are not really prepared to know all of this vocabulary. And instead of preparing flashcards and studying vocabulary by heart, we normally do some games using Google Lab. It's similar to the Kahoot experience if you are more familiar with this. And then students normally compete in small groups, or it could be also pairs or sometimes individually. Normally I get to decide, and they practice the vocabulary that we do throughout the units using these Google Lab activities. But for more information, you can actually just check this paper I published in 2024. Also, for course material, I actually use my own book, the one that I designed and use for my course. Is English for Economic Purposes, a university course. There you have the QR or the URL if you wanna check about this material. And it's normally divided into the different units that I teach my course about. So we start with an introduction to English for specific purposes, and then we cover like different historical ideas of economics, and then macro and microeconomics. And it's not like an EMI course, but it's an ESP course, but it is really content based. So we normally speak about different topics about macro and micro economics, but with the focus on English, right? The different activities that we do, as I mentioned before, they follow that hiding process logical order, right? We first start with the written tasks. So we do the resume, the cover letter, and the email, right? We normally do this within the first half of the course, and then we devote the other half of the course to oral activities. First we do a job interview that they do in pairs. Instead of me interviewing the students, I normally ask them to prepare like a script in which one student performs as an interviewer and the other student performs as an interviewee, and they have to resemble a real job interview. And finally, they have to do the elevator pitch. The elevator pitch is an activity that they do normally either in pairs or in really small groups, like 3 students. Sometimes students can also do this activity individually. Sometimes I also try to link this activity to SDGs, to the Sustainable Development Goals. So for that matter, I ask students to represent different English-speaking countries all over the world, and I ask them to do research about the different SDGs and how those countries are missing some of the targets. And I ask them to prepare different ideas. They could already exist, or it could be innovative ideas that they create. And students just think of an idea that they have to present through an elevator pitch to the rest of the class, and then the class works as a sort of a shark tank, and they invest on the different ideas that students prepare for the elevator pitch. But once again, the whole purpose is that the idea or product that they try to sell and get funding for is something good in order to fight some of the missing targets of the SDGs. As final remarks, I'd say that because they are first year students, they are not properly aware of their learning needs. So they actually think that the course is an English for general purposes course until I explain through the introduction in the first unit. Uh, but because they don't have work experience, sometimes they are not really aware of the different professional needs that they will have in prospective jobs, right? And also, I'd say that significant proficiency differences among students in one classroom, even though that the classes are split into different sections, they are really significant. And then some students um, are really shy, and they are not used to talking in a foreign language. And then we have some other students that have studied in bilingual schools all their lives. So it's a bit of a challenge for the professor to try to disentangle all this chaos and make students speak. So normally I try to make students work together, but because they don't know each other, sometimes they're shy. So this situation, it's a bit challenging, I'd say. And the last remark I would like to make has to do with a paper I published in 2024 with Chavez Juste. And it is some findings that we did regarding this group, which is that these students of economics, they are more motivated than English for general purposes students because they are focused on future goals. So even though that they are not aware of their needs in the future, they are actually interested in those future goals. They actually see themselves, and here we see the most influential motivation factor, which is the ideal L2 self. Students actually think and believe that this is key in their motivation. They want to see themselves in the future, right? They actually have a desire to integrate in the global business environment in the future, and they actually want to become highly proficient users of the language in a professional context. And well, this is all for me. This is the ESP class that I actually teach. And I thank you for your attention. And it would be a pleasure if you have any questions or comments or suggestions for me to improve my teaching. Thank you.